detention or another, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has been set free after reaching a plea deal with the U.S. government. Assange was formally charged under then-President Donald Trump in 2019. He was hit with 17 counts of breaching the Espionage Act, despite not being a citizen of the United States. He's been freed under reaching a deal that would see him plead guilty to one count of conspiracy to obtain and disclose classified U.S. national defense documents, according to a filing in the U.S. District Court for Northern Mariana Islands. Assange appeared in a court in Saipan, a U.S. territory, at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, or 11 p.m. on Tuesday, Greenwich Mean Time, where he was sentenced to 62 months of the time that he was already serving. Now, originally on the 23rd of May 2019, he was indicted on 17 charges relating to the Espionage Act of 1917 in the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. Now, WikiLeaks did take to Twitter to speak about the situation. Assange is free. He left Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison on the morning of the 24th of June after having spent 1,900 days there. He was granted bail by the High Court in London and was released on the Stansted Airport during the afternoon, where he boarded a plane and departed the UK. This is the result of a global campaign that spanned grassroots organizations, press freedom campaigners, legislators, and leaders from across the political spectrum, all the way to the United Nations. This created the space for a long period of negotiations with the U.S. Department of Justice, leading to a deal that has not yet been formally finalized, which has been finalized now. We will provide more information as soon as it is possible. Now, as you'll recall, he was actually charged over the collateral murder video from 2007, where the U.S. had footage of itself intentionally murdering journalists in the Middle East using a helicopter. They were killed from automatic fire from a helicopter. And it was shown, they knew, the people there, those piloting the helicopter, knew that they were journalists and were told to kill them because they were journalists. So what was leaked to the public was proof of a U.S. war crime. But the people who leaked it are the bad guys. And yeah, that's what this entire situation was about. Literally exposing a war crime. And that's why Julian Assange has had to suffer for more than a decade. Because of his willingness to tell the truth of a crime that the U.S. government committed. And this charge is frankly bullshit. He should never have been charged. And he can't be charged. He's not a U.S. citizen. You can't accuse someone of... It's like accusing someone of disloyalty who never was loyal to you, who was never on your side and never pretended to be on your side. I mean, it's completely stupid. And it's charging someone for the same thing that you do all the time. And for all the outrage over U.S. politicians, particularly conservative ones, but liberal ones were not exempt from this in any way, shape, or form. None of them acknowledged the fact that what he was exposing was a war crime. They went on and on and on with all this nonsense about how he placed the lives of U.S. troops at risk by leaking this information. Yet WikiLeaks, a number of years ago, dared them. Show one person who's died as a result of this information. And even some conservative politicians in the U.S. claimed that U.S. troops died as a result of this information, which never happened. I said they were challenged to release the name of one person who died because of this, one person who was harmed because of this. And to date, the U.S. government has not listed a single individual. Not one. Because it never happened. And this is all bound up with Chelsea Manning, who was also part of this. Chelsea Manning was the one who actually leaked the footage to WikiLeaks and spent, I believe it was about 7 years in a military prison for, disloyal conduct or espionage or leaking information, etc., when it was not illegal because it would have had whistleblower protections, ones that were created as a result of the New York Times Now, the New York Times put out information some time ago, and they were charged. And a court found that the New York Times had the right as a whistleblower to release that information because it was in the public's interest of as checks and balances against power. But apparently, basically, that law that protects whistleblowers that the New York Times created, the New York Times just seemed to forget about that when they were running up everything to call for Julian Assange to be arrested, charged, etc., while many U.S. politicians were calling for him to be murdered extrajudicially without trial, because the United States is a democracy and believes in rules-based order and all of that, while literally doing the exact opposite. And Chelsea Manning eventually was let go by then U.S. President Barack Obama and was able to move on with the rest of her life and whatnot. We should also never forget that Julian Assange was also accused of rape. 2 women accused him of essentially assaulting them. And then later, the charges were dropped, and one of the women who accused him later came out and said that she was coerced by the government into making that accusation. All this happened in Sweden. That she said she was coerced by the government to make the accusation. That it had never happened. This was after the statute of limitations had been passed up. Once they knew that they had no moral high ground to stand on in trying to punish a whistleblower, they actually resorted to falsely accusing him of rape to try to malign his character in order to get people to side against him for having done the right thing. I mean, that just shows how incredibly despicable the United States government is and how despicable the government of Sweden is for going along with that and enabling a false charge. That proof that no good deed goes unpunished. And then it was only until January 2021 when a British judge ruled that Assange cannot be extradited to the U.S. because he's likely to kill himself if held under harsh U.S. prison conditions. Which I think is kind of strange because they were going to kill him. They shouldn't have been extradited because they were going to kill him, and then shouldn't have been extradited because he didn't actually break the law, and the law didn't actually apply to him. These are some really much more important points that probably should have brought up. To be perfectly honest, I wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't want to be in a U.S. prison where they had where you were already going under a false charge with like the worst stuff that they could possibly make up about you. So, in that circumstance, I really don't blame, I really wouldn't blame him in that situation. But all of this is just so utterly ridiculous compared to the fact that this guy has been tortured and abused all of this time because he exposed a U.S. Army war crime. And all the mainstream media coverage completely ignores this. They just completely ignore this point all the way through. And that shows what dishonest pieces of shit that they really are and why they have no integrity as journalists. To deliberately leave this out. And important it is because it was the whole basis for wanting him arrested and executed. And that really just tells you everything. And just one more thing that really got to me. There's actually really big conspiracy theory accounts, thank you Elon Musk, who are actually claiming that Julian Assange was never under arrest that entire time. They actually literally claim he's been in witness protection. From what? I have no idea. So basically all the torture that he's been through in prison never happened. The conspiracy theory people are completely unbelievable. Just they're absolute garbage people. To actually sit there and pretend like the last 10 or so years essentially did not happen because they lack even basic critical thinking skills is completely unbelievable. And conspiracy theory nonsense is getting larger and larger as the day goes by. But for now, we should celebrate the good news, and that is Julian Assange going free. Finally. Despite having done nothing wrong and having to plead guilty to a charge that is complete nonsense and couldn't even actually be applied to him. But it's a win, no matter what. He still gets to go home, see his family, all of that. Well-deserved. And, here's to Julian Assange having, as much as possible, a happy and normal life for the rest of his life.
Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.